In a blistering address that cut through the diplomatic fog of Western capitals, Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas today passionately rejected the move by France, Italy, and the United States to de-escalate the conflict in Ukraine, labeling the calls for a ceasefire a coward peace that would only guarantee a future, more devastating war. Speaking from Tallinn, with the flags of her Baltic neighbors standing alongside Estonia's, Kallas became the defiant voice of NATO's eastern flank, a group of nations that now feels profoundly abandoned by its most powerful allies. She declared that she and her regional partners would not be fooled by what she terms the siren song of false negotiations, vowing to continue supporting Ukraine by any means necessary, even if they had to do it alone. Her speech marked the formal crystallization of a third bloc within the Western Alliance, a coalition of frontline states who believe they are fighting for their very survival. We are told that the time has come for pragmatism. We are told to accept the new reality. We are told to seek peace, Kallas began, her voice steady and laced with cold fury. But let us be clear about the peace that is being offered. It is the peace of the graveyard. It is the peace of a subjugated nation. It is a pause that allows the aggressor to reload his gun, to rest his soldiers, and to choose his next victim. We in this part of Europe have read this history book before. We know how it ends. The leaders in Paris and Rome who speaks of economic hardship should ask themselves what price their industries will pay when the war comes to their doorstep, as it surely will if we show weakness now. They are not opting out of a conflict. They are merely delaying their own turn. Her criticism of the Franco-Italian Rome Accord was relentless and deeply personal. She accused President Macron and Prime Minister Meloni of a catastrophic failure of strategic vision, driven by domestic political convenience and a profound misunderstanding of the stakes. They speak of their suffering citizens, Kallas argued, but do they not see the suffering of the Ukrainians whose homes are being destroyed? Do they not understand that our economic pain today is the price of freedom? It is a price we here are willing to pay because we know the alternative is infinitely worse. They are trading the long-term security of the entire European continent for a few months of cheaper energy and a temporary political victory. It is a betrayal not only of Ukraine, but of every nation that believes in a Europe whole and free. She declares their call for negotiations without preconditions to be a direct surrender to Moscow's term, an act that would validate the use of brutal force to change borders. In the wake of Kallas' speech, the leaders of Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia immediately issued statements of full support, and within hours they had convened an emergency summit in Tallinn. The meeting produced a new formal alliance within the alliance, a pact of mutual assistance dedicated to the continued defense of Ukraine. This Tallinn Pact outlined a series of concrete and desperate measures. The member nations pledged to pool their remaining military resources and create a joint logistical command to streamline the flow of arms and ammunition across their borders into western Ukraine. This Baltic-Polish aid corridor, as it was dubbed, is a direct challenge to the de-escalation policy of their larger EU partners, creating a dedicated supply line to keep the Ukrainian military from collapsing entirely. The pact also included a pledge to dramatically increase their own defense spending far beyond the NATO target of 2% of GDP and to accelerate the integration of their military command structure. In a move designed to send a clear message to both Moscow and Washington, they jointly issued a formal request for the United Kingdom to establish a new, permanent and heavily armed military base in the region. The pointed exclusion of a request to the United States was a clear signal of their loss of faith in the current American administration's commitment to their security. They are now actively seeking a new primary security guarantor in London, creating a major new fissure within the NATO command structure. The reaction from Washington to Kallas' defiant stand was a mixture of dismissiveness from the White House and procedural formality from the State Department. President Donald Trump took to social media to mock the Estonian leader. The head of Estonia, a country most people cannot find on a map, is trying to lecture the United States on security, he wrote. He wants to keep the forever war going so that the American taxpayer will keep footing the bill. Not happening. These people are worse than our enemies. They want to drag us into World War III. We want peace and we will get it, with or without these ungrateful so-called allies. The post was seen as a crude but effective summary of the administration's view that Kallas and her allies were hysterical, reckless warmongers. Secretary of State Marco Rubio offered a more polished but equally unyielding response. The United States has an ironclad, rock-solid, and unwavering commitment to Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty. Rubio said in a press briefing, "An attack on any member of the alliance is an attack on all. Let there be no ambiguity on that point. However, our commitment to our allies' defense is not a blank check for them to dictate American foreign policy in conflicts outside of the treaty's boundary. We understand the historical anxieties of our Baltic partners, but the United States will not be drawn into a wider war in Ukraine. The policy of this administration is to seek a swift and peaceful resolution to that conflict, and we urge all parties to work toward that goal rather than engaging in rhetoric that only increased tensions." The message was clear. America would defend Estonia, but it would not help Estonia defend Ukraine. Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth further reinforced this position by addressing the military realities. When asked if the United States would backfill the military equipment that the Tallinn Pact nations were sending to Ukraine, his answer was a blunt no. The United States Armed Forces are undergoing a necessary period of rebuilding and readiness recovery, Hegseth stated. The strategic priority of the Department of Defense is to ensure our own military is prepared for any contingency that directly threatens the American homeland or our core national interests. We cannot continue to deplete our own strategic stockpiles of tanks, artillery, and ammunition to replace equipment being sent to a third-party conflict. The sovereign decisions of our allies have consequences, and they must be prepared to accept those consequences for their own defense industrial base. This effectively means that the eastern flank nations are now cannibalizing their own defense capabilities to prop up Ukraine, with no guarantee that America will help them replenish their arsenal. This American stance has left Kallas and her allies in a terrifyingly isolated position. They are now the primary obstacle to the peace that Moscow, Washington, Paris, and Rome all seem to desire for their own reasons. Their decision to go it alone is an act of immense geopolitical courage, but also a gamble of existential proportion. They are betting that their combined, albeit limited, support can prevent a total Ukrainian collapse long enough for the political winds in the West to change. They are also making themselves the most prominent and defiant targets of Russia's anger, all while their most powerful ally, the United States, publicly questioned their judgment and refused to offer material support for their strategy. The societies within the Tallinn Pact nations are being mobilized for a long struggle. Public broadcasting in these countries is filled with messages equating the fight in Ukraine with their own historical struggle for independence from Moscow. The economic pain of high energy prices and inflation is being framed not as a policy failure, but as a necessary national sacrifice, a patriotic duty. While this narrative is holding for now, there are signs of strain. Small but growing protests are beginning to appear, with some citizens asking why they must suffer more than their wealthier counterparts in Western Europe. The leaders of the Tallinn Pact are in a desperate race against time, trying to keep Ukraine in the fight while holding their own societies together and praying that their gamble does not result in them becoming the next front line in a war their allies have no appetite to fight. They cannot be fooled by the promise of a false peace, but they also cannot escape the terrifying reality of their growing isolation. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel. And so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed, and that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to Soak Hang Rich, You don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first ones on me. But if you have watched this show before, it's like you are a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build this show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. That's all for me for today. We'll see you soon. Bye for now.